You know, one of the most disheartening parts about Trump 2.0 is watching just how fast he proved every one of us right. Those of us here in the pro democracy movement sat here for years trying to warn people about what was coming. And what we basically did was just went back and rolled clips of Donald Trump himself talking and said, listen, this is what the guy is saying that he will do. He's talking about being a dictator on day one. We didn't pull that out of our ass. That's not something we just made up on the spot. That's something he said, and we rolled clip after clip of him saying it. He's the one that talked about terminating the Constitution. If that doesn't raise a red flag to anyone, I don't know what does. We showed it time and time again. And people kept telling us that we were just being hyperbolic. And I can't count the times that people said, oh, Brando, you ain't got to worry about that. He ain't going to do those things. There's checks and balances in place. And just since he's been back in office on January 20th, we have saw him just come in and take a blowtorch to all of those checks and balances. And then we've sat back and watched MAGA be okay with it. And it's just crickets over there. They're not saying anything. But those of us that were warning people this entire time sits back and sees it for what it is. And we're not trying to be hyperbolic. We're not trying to scare people or get people worked up. We're just simply, again, pointing out the obvious. I've talked politics my entire life, and I've seen this country have conflicts with other countries. We all lived through, or most of us did, live through the Iraq War. And during that war, I remember there were those of us who said we shouldn't be part of that war. And there was the Republicans that said, yes, we should. And what's funny about that one is that Republicans back then were saying that we needed to go into the Middle East and we needed to get rid of a dictator and install democracy. So they've completely jumped the shark and completely flipped the switch on this one. But that's what they used to be preaching. However, I don't ever recall anyone being for Saddam Hussein. I don't recall there being a time in history where one political party was behind our ally and the other political party was behind the enemy. But that's clearly where we're at, and Trump has made it more clear here in the last couple of days. So I'm going to read you a couple of articles here from MidasNews.com. Again, these should be giant red flags to anyone. This isn't us being hyperbolic. This is us watching American democracy slip, and we're just trying to call it out. I'm going to bring this first article up here because both of these are worth the read. Zelensky was left out of peace talks, says Ukraine won't accept the results. So Trump and Putin are moving forward with negotiations without Ukraine. And this is from Troy Matthews from MidasNews.com. So the Ukrainian President Zelensky said Monday that talks between Russia and the United States to end the Russian invasion of Ukraine will not be successful, and Ukraine, explicitly left out of negotiations, will not accept the results. And first of all, who could blame the guy? Zelensky told reporters during a trip to the UAE that he had not been invited to the peace talks in Saudi Arabia scheduled for this week, and that the talks would yield no results without Ukraine having a seat at the table. Russia is represented in talks beginning Tuesday by Foreign Minister, I can't pronounce that last name, Lavrov, I guess they say that, not sure, and Putin's foreign affairs advisor, I can't pronounce that name either, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio, finally got one, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz lead the U.S. delegation, which also includes Trump ally real estate investor Stephen Witkoff, special envoy to the Middle East. So Zelensky told journalists on a call, the question is not about what Ukraine can give, but what Ukraine can receive. It is very important for us. We are very interested indeed in signing an agreement with the United States of America. Trump has also sidelined European leaders for peace talks, alarming traditional U.S. allies who see that Trump moving forward on negotiations with Russia may undermine years of effort at isolating Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. UK Prime Minister Starmer, French President, and the German Chancellor called a special emergency meeting of select European heads of government to address the Trump-Russia talks. Starmer said he is willing to deploy British troops to Ukraine to ensure that any peace deal is respected. J.D. Vance, while speaking at the Munich Security Conference last week, left no doubt that U.S. policy toward Europe and Russia had changed, lecturing European leaders to get over Russian meddling in their elections, and meeting afterwards with the AfD president, Alice Weidel, leader of the party, has been labeled as an extremist, but not Chancellor Schloss. Any negotiation that seeks concessions from Ukraine after their nation was invaded would be a bizarre departure from decades of international policy. But the Trump MAGA line about Ukraine has been consistently one of war and not invasion, as if both sides carry equal burden in ending the conflict. Trump has said that Zelensky will be involved in the peace talks, but did not give any further information. Russia state TV site RT began covering the talks on Tuesday morning, showing just how excited the Russian government is to be negotiating the terms for ending their own invasion. So I'm going to attempt to break this down the simplest way that I know how, and I don't consider myself to be a genius. I'm just a dude of average intelligence, but Ukraine has always been our ally. They were invaded by Russia. And now we're having talks with Russia and leaving Ukraine out. Can anybody not see just how fucked up this truly is? And I know there's people out there who don't appreciate my F-bombs, but I can't find no better word to describe this one. This one's truly fucked up. And if you think that is fucked up, this article here from Midas Touch is even more alarming, because Trump says Ukraine should have never started the war with Russia. This was from Troy Matthews as well. Zelensky responded by saying Trump was in a disinformation space. So Donald Trump blamed Ukraine for being invaded by Russia in a rambling speech on Tuesday, in which he attacked Ukrainian President Zelensky for wanting a seat at the negotiating table to end the unprovoked attack on his country, stating that Zelensky should have never started the war with Russia. Never one to blame Russia or its dictator Vladimir Putin for anything. Trump, whose administration is currently negotiating an end to the war, signaled his full support for Russia in a stunning moment of betrayal to U.S. allies and the cause of freedom and democracy around the world. Trump's comments came in response to Zelensky, stating bluntly that any peace talks that did not include Ukraine will not be accepted by Ukraine. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago, Trump told reporters at Mar-a-Lago. And I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it in 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. So now he's blaming Ukraine and saying it's their fault that they got invaded. This is ridiculous. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, Trump continued, and no people would have been killed and no cities would have been demolished. Upon hearing the news that he was being blamed for his country being invaded, Zelensky responded to Trump saying, unfortunately, President Trump, I have great respect for him as a leader of a nation that we have great respect for, the American people who always support us, but unfortunately he lives in a disinformation space. Trump's comments came after a group of European leaders organized a separate set of talks on Ukraine after also being sidelined in the U.S.-Russia peace talks. Though no agreement was reached, UK Prime Minister Starmer said that he is ready and willing to put British troops on the ground to maintain peace after any deal is struck. The EU announced Wednesday that new sanctions would be imposed on Russia. Trump's words signal that his administration may be ready to demand concessions from Ukraine, including land, and that far from living as a pariah state as a consequence for invading their neighbor and launching the biggest land war in Europe since World War II and committing countless war crimes, including the kidnapping of thousands of children, Russia is about to be elevated to the status of normalcy. Trump is prepared to permanently change NATO alliance to ensure Putin escapes without consequences. Trump has also stated that Russia deserved to be welcomed back as a G7 nation. Trump also told reporters on Tuesday that Ukraine is living under martial law and that Zelensky has a 4% approval rating with Ukrainians. But as usual, coming from Trump, that is a lie, as a recent poll revealed that Zelensky's approval rating is at steady 57% in Ukraine, much higher than Donald Trump's own in the United States. So what's truly disturbing about all of this is just how bold and brazen Donald Trump is to now blame Ukraine for the invasion and blatantly side with Vladimir Putin. And we live in a world where MAGA is going to go with anything Donald Trump says. So now if Donald Trump says Ukraine is the enemy, they're all going to roll with it. And that has never been the case in our country before. I have never seen a time where two political parties were on opposite sides of the fence, especially when it comes to standing with our allies. We talk about democracy all the time. We talk about it every day here on the channel. But democracy is not just threatened here at home, it's threatened abroad too, clearly. And Donald Trump is saying out loud that he's on the side with Russia, and he's now blaming Ukraine. And folks, there is nothing normal about this. We should have never been here. This is a point in American history that we should have never been at, and I cannot imagine what my grandfather would be saying if he was back, a World War II veteran. I cannot imagine what he would be thinking today if he was seeing an American president siding with the Russians over European democracy. And this isn't us just trying to be hyperbolic. This is us trying to say, we told you so. And I hate to be that guy. I never wanted to be sitting here saying, we told you so. But the guy came in acting like a dictator, and now he's talking with another dictator and blaming one of our allies for being invaded, and it's absolutely disgusting. And I don't know how we really come back from this. To be honest with you folks, I don't have the answers. I'm just a guy sitting here trying to figure it all out, and it just gets crazier as the days go on. But I truly appreciate all of your support here on the channel, and if you haven't already and you like the kind of content I do, be sure and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and get in on these crazy conversations if you feel like it. But like I always say, sometimes I myself have to steer clear of the comment section. And so if that's the case, just leave a blue heart. That helps boost the videos in the algorithm. But I never thought we would be here. And all we can do is keep standing up for our allies and keep standing up for democracy and keep fighting this tyranny. But folks, it looks like we're going to be in this one for the long haul.